Zarakez, the most famous supermodel in the galaxy, was not only renowned for her beauty but also for her status as the ultimate alien influencer. She was Kithara's finest, otherworldly features that made even the stars look dull, a charisma that could make the fiercest beings soften, and a presence that commanded attention in any room she stepped into. With her delicate, glowing skin and eyes that shimmered like distant nebulae, Zara was an anomaly to the universe. For the longest time, no one had dared to ask what made her more than just a model, until the humans entered the picture. On the planet Earth, a rather unsuspecting human, Daniel, was an intergalactic translator. He had never intended to get caught up in anything larger than his translator role. He had always been one to dodge the spotlight and maintain a low profile, just a regular Earthling trying to make a living. But here he was, about to enter the sprawling empire of fashion that was far beyond his wildest imaginings. Zarakez was in the midst of another photoshoot when she first met Daniel. He had been assigned as her translator for the project, a gig that involved navigating the complex cultural dynamics of alien fashion. Zara, intrigued by Earth's modest yet curious qualities, couldn't understand why humans valued things like clothes made of cotton or strange human trends like selfies. Daniel, awkward and clumsy, immediately made Zara feel both amused and exasperated. To her, human life seemed chaotic, yet utterly fascinating. She watched Daniel nervously fumble with his gadgets and make silly, innocent comments. He was just a translator, but to Zara, he was one of the most intriguing humans she had ever encountered. After hours of translating, Zara realized she had a strange attraction to Daniel. He wasn't physically impressive by her standards, certainly not what her Kitharan admirers looked like. He was far from perfect. Yet his imperfections were refreshingly raw, unrefined. He ate junk food with joy and had the strangest fascination with basic earthly pleasures. Zara found herself drawn to his quirky nature, and after a few drinks, her curiosity won over. They spent the night together, not expecting anything more than a fleeting pleasure. Neither of them had any idea that one careless night would lead to an outcome neither had planned for. A few weeks later, Zara found herself in a situation she couldn't fathom. During a routine checkup by her alien medical team, she discovered that she was pregnant. At first, Zara dismissed the possibility. A Kitharan would never fall pregnant so easily, especially from a human. But when the test confirmed the bizarre truth, she was forced to confront a reality that had no logical explanation. The child was a fusion of her perfect genetic makeup and Daniel's peculiar human DNA, a combination that had never been seen before in the galaxy. Zara could only laugh bitterly at the absurdity of it all. A Kitharan and a human, pregnant together? The medical team was baffled, but their curiosity about the potential of this hybrid life form soon turned into greed. The child would possess unimaginable power, combining the best of both species. It could change the galaxy, forever. Zara couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. She was terrified of what the child could become, but she also couldn't deny the uniqueness of the situation. She, Zarakez, the greatest model in the galaxy, was carrying something that no one in the universe had ever dreamed possible. As the news spread, the reactions were chaotic. Zara's pregnancy would be the talk of the universe. It was a scandal, a revelation, an event that could not be ignored. And so, Zara made the decision to break the news to Earth first. She didn't know what to expect. Maybe it would be a shock to Daniel, maybe even to herself. But what she didn't anticipate was the sheer uproar her announcement would create. Zara's message was simple. "Human, you got me pregnant." It wasn't just a statement of biological fact. It was an invitation to the galaxy to look at Earth in a new way. Human genetics, previously considered primitive and inferior by most species, were now the most sought-after trait in the universe. The galaxies that once dismissed Earth as insignificant were now paying attention. They had overlooked the humans, mocked their unruly nature, but now, the whole galaxy was talking about the peculiar human species. Zara wasn't just pregnant with a child, she was pregnant with an idea that had the potential to change everything. Daniel, for his part, was completely blindsided. He had no idea how to handle the news. How could he? One minute, he was just doing his job, translating for an alien supermodel. The next, he was the father of a child who could possess unimaginable powers. The press descended on him like a swarm of locusts, each reporter with a different question, each alien culture more curious than the last. His social media accounts exploded with messages, memes, and strange fan club requests. He had never felt more out of place in his life. How was he supposed to raise a child with Zara? What did he even know about alien babies? What did he know about being a father, period? His awkwardness grew as more aliens demanded to know what he planned to do. They wanted answers, and all Daniel could offer were his wide-eyed, clueless expressions. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humans had always been seen as less than in galactic society, inferior in intelligence, technology, and even appearance. Now, humans were suddenly the center of attention for something far more important than anyone could have imagined: human genetics. Zara's announcement had turned the tables, and the universe wasn't sure whether it was impressed or terrified. Daniel, meanwhile, couldn't stop wondering how the hell he had gotten into this mess. Yet, in the midst of the madness, Daniel discovered something strange. Amid the chaos of being thrust into the public eye, he realized that he wasn't so different from these aliens after all. They might have advanced technology, the ability to manipulate time, or minds more sophisticated than his, but he had something that none of them had: humanity. His flaws were what made him human, and as he worked through the confusion and the absurdity of it all, he realized that those imperfections might just be what made him the perfect candidate to raise this child with Zara. Zara watched Daniel struggle. At first, she had thought his human quirks were endearing. Now, as the stakes grew higher and their lives became more entwined, she began to see the value in human nature. Earth might have seemed chaotic, illogical even, but it was real, raw, and filled with a spark that no alien species could replicate. Daniel's imperfections were, in a way, his strength. He had no idea what was coming, but he was handling it in a way that no Kithran or any other alien could ever replicate. As Zara prepared to face the world's inevitable questions, she also realized that Daniel would be the one to help her navigate the unimaginable future ahead. Together, they would try to raise a child who would change the universe. Despite all the mess, the confusion, and the overwhelming expectations, Zara couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride in the very thing that had caused such chaos: her union with a human. In the end, she realized that this child was more than just a child. It was a symbol of the improbable, of the unexpected, and of the power of two seemingly incompatible species coming together. It was a new chapter for Earth. The universe would soon see that humanity, for all its flaws and imperfections, had a place in the galactic order. The child that Zara carried would be proof of that, a human Kithran hybrid that would forever change the course of intergalactic history. And maybe, just maybe, Earth wasn't as insignificant as the universe had once believed. Zarakez couldn't believe the news. Her Kithran medical team had confirmed it 3 times: she was pregnant. The child inside her was a product of her one-night encounter with Daniel, a human translator. It shouldn't have been possible. Kithrans were genetically engineered to perfection, and humans were seen as primitive, unpolished creatures. How could such a bizarre cross-species union result in a pregnancy? And yet, here she was, carrying a child that was half human, half Kithran. She couldn't help but laugh, even though it was more of a nervous chuckle. This was a crisis, not just for her but for her entire species. Her child wasn't just a miracle, it was a scientific anomaly. A hybrid. The first of its kind. Zara had never experienced anything like this in her entire life. And neither had the Kithrans. Her people were curious but terrified. They had no idea what to expect from this unique pregnancy. What powers would the child possess? Would it be a perfect blend of both species, or would it be something else entirely? No one knew. Zara's initial reaction was disbelief. How could she, the most sought-after being in the galaxy, be pregnant with a human's child? Her first instinct was to hide it. She didn't want to deal with the endless questions and gossip. But there was no hiding something like this. Zara realized she would have to face the galaxy and announce the pregnancy. But how? The enormity of the situation was hard to grasp. She had to break the news to Earth, and then to the rest of the universe. The implications of this pregnancy were far-reaching. There was no easy way to announce it. So Zara decided to do it the way that felt most natural, brutally honest, with no sugarcoating. "Human, you got me pregnant," she said, standing before the holographic cameras in her private quarters. The words rang out with unexpected finality. It wasn't just an announcement. It was a declaration. The galaxy would listen. The moment her message was broadcast, the reactions were instantaneous. Shock. Confusion. Laughter. Everyone had an opinion on this strange development, and every alien species reacted differently. Some were baffled, unable to comprehend how a Kithran and a human could have created life. Others were more intrigued. To some, it was an opportunity. The human race, once thought insignificant and primitive, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight. And then there was Daniel. Poor, unsuspecting Daniel. Zara knew she would have to break the news to him next. It wasn't like she had a choice. He was the father, after all. She had to face him. But how do you tell a mild-mannered human that his life had just been turned upside down? That his one-night stand with an alien supermodel had resulted in an intergalactic scandal? She didn't know, but she had to do it. Daniel's response was nothing short of hilarious. He was completely caught off guard. Zara found it almost impossible not to laugh as Daniel sputtered and stammered in response to the news. Wait, what? I'm what? Pregnant? How? I didn't even. His voice trailed off as he realized the enormity of what he was hearing. Zara couldn't help but chuckle. Yes, Daniel. You got me pregnant. And now the entire galaxy is watching us. It was at this point that Daniel realized he had no idea what to do. This wasn't just a simple situation where you send flowers and say sorry. No, this was galactic-level chaos. The whole universe was watching him, and they expected answers. But what could he say? What could he do? He was just a translator, a guy who barely understood how to keep his job on Earth, let alone figure out how to raise a hybrid child with an alien supermodel. Wait, so, are we like a thing now? Daniel asked, completely flustered. Zara smiled wryly. I wouldn't put it that way. But I need you to understand that this child, our child, could change everything. The galaxy is watching us now, Daniel. They're going to want answers. They'll want to know how this could happen, what it means for the future of both of our species. Daniel blinked a few times as if processing the sheer absurdity of it all. And what are we supposed to do now? I mean, I'm just a translator, Zara. I barely understand galactic customs. How am I supposed to figure out how to be a father to an alien baby? To our baby? His voice cracked with genuine confusion. Zara shrugged. I don't know. But we'll figure it out. Together. I know this isn't ideal, but we can't undo what happened. And now we have to deal with it. The more Zara tried to explain the gravity of the situation, the more Daniel seemed to crumble under the pressure. His face flushed red, and he paced back and forth, muttering things under his breath. I can't believe this is happening. Why me? I'm just a guy who likes pizza and reading comics. I'm not a galactic hero. Zara's lips curled into a smile. There was something endearing about Daniel's complete inability to handle the situation. It was a stark contrast to the cold, calculated logic of the Kithrans. Daniel was human, and his unpredictability and flaws made him strangely perfect for this moment. As outlandish as it was, he was a symbol of the raw humanity that had suddenly become the focus of galactic attention. But that was the problem. The galaxy wasn't ready for humans to be the center of attention. For years, humans had been seen as beneath the more advanced species. Kithrans were admired for their genetic superiority, their perfect forms and flawless minds. The idea that a human, a being that could barely understand their advanced technology, could create something as powerful as a hybrid child with Zara was unthinkable. Yet it had happened. And now, everyone was scrambling to understand what it meant. Zara's announcement had sent ripples throughout the galaxy. For the first time, humans were viewed as something more than just inferior creatures. They had become desirable. It wasn't just that Zara was carrying a hybrid child. It was that the child would be the embodiment of something new, something powerful. The Kitharans had always prided themselves on their perfection. But they had never considered that imperfection, humanity's unique blend of chaos and creativity, might have something to offer. The announcement sparked conversations, debates, and even excitement among alien species. Some saw the hybrid child as a new opportunity to take control of the galaxy. Others simply saw it as an enigma that needed to be studied. Zara, of course, wasn't sure what to make of it all. She wasn't the only one affected by this pregnancy. Her entire species was. Zara had always been the epitome of grace, confidence, and composure. But this was a challenge she hadn't anticipated. And as the reality of her situation set in, she realized just how much her life, and Daniel's, would never be the same. She had to face the future, knowing that her child would have the power to change everything. And yet, all she could do was take it one step at a time, dealing with the absurdity of the situation in the most human way possible, with humor, awkwardness, and plenty of mistakes along the way. But for now, she would have to focus on Daniel. He was going to be an integral part of this journey, whether he liked it or not. And as she looked at him, struggling to process the news, Zara couldn't help but smile. Maybe humans were more resilient than she had given them credit for. And maybe, just maybe, this bizarre, chaotic situation would turn out to be the greatest adventure of all. The news of Zara's pregnancy spread like wildfire, and it wasn't long before the entire galaxy was buzzing with questions. The implications of this child were far-reaching. Zara, once the epitome of perfection, now had something new to contend with, a child that was a fusion of two species. The fact that it was human and Kitharan made it an unimaginable combination, something no one had ever seen before. The possibilities were endless, and with that came fear and excitement in equal measure. The galaxy wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. Zara knew the world was watching. The tension was palpable. The idea that a human could father a child with an alien supermodel, someone so far removed from humanity's average, was unthinkable. Yet here they were, Daniel and Zara, the parents of a child who could change everything. The question on everyone's mind was simple: what would this child be like? Would it inherit the beauty and strength of the Kitharans? Or would it be something completely new, something neither species could anticipate? No one knew. For Zara, the problem wasn't just the pregnancy. It was the pressure that came with it. She wasn't just carrying a child, she was carrying the future of two species. The fate of Earth and Kitharan now rested in her hands. And to make matters worse, she had Daniel, her one-night stand, right there beside her. He was the father, but did he even know what that meant? Did he understand the responsibility that came with it? Zara wasn't sure. She didn't even know if she was ready for what lay ahead. Daniel, for his part, was completely out of his depth. He had no idea how to navigate this intergalactic mess. One minute, he was a translator, just a guy with a pretty normal job, and the next, he was thrust into the center of a galactic controversy. The father of an alien child. How was he supposed to deal with this? The media swarmed him at every turn, throwing questions at him faster than he could process them. "What's your plan for the child?" they would ask. "How will you raise a hybrid?" He had no answers. No clue. "I didn't sign up for this," Daniel muttered to himself one night, sitting in a small, dimly lit room, staring out into space. He had been asked about 100 times already what he planned to do. The truth was, he didn't have a plan. He was just trying to stay afloat. It felt like his life had turned upside down in an instant. There was no blueprint for this, no rulebook. He was expected to raise a child who could very well be more powerful than anything he'd ever encountered. And the worst part? He had no idea what kind of father he was supposed to be. Zara's presence only added to the chaos. As she prepared for the child's birth, she found herself bombarded with advice, some helpful, some utterly absurd, from the alien elites who thought they knew what was best. Some suggested she should get rid of the child, fearing the chaos it could bring to the galactic order. Others offered to adopt the child and raise it in secret, away from prying eyes. But Zara refused. This was her child, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. But even Zara wasn't immune to the pressure. Every time she looked at Daniel, she saw the fear in his eyes, and it made her doubt herself. Was she really ready to be a mother? Could she handle the responsibility of raising a hybrid child in a universe that wasn't ready for such a thing? The weight of the situation became almost too much to bear. And as much as Daniel fumbled his way through the madness, Zara knew he was the only one who could help her navigate this strange new reality. The tension between the two of them was palpable. It wasn't just the galactic expectations or the constant pressure from every corner of the universe. It was the fact that they had no idea how to do this. The question of whether they even had a relationship, or were just two people thrown together by circumstance, loomed large. But despite the uncertainty, they both knew one thing: they couldn't do this alone. As the pregnancy progressed, the reactions from other alien species became more intense. Some factions saw the child as an opportunity for power. Others saw it as a threat. The galaxy was divided. Some wanted to protect Zara and the child, while others saw them as nothing more than a political pawn in a larger game. And through it all, Zara and Daniel were stuck in the middle, trying to figure out how to survive in a universe that was rapidly changing. It was during one of their many heated discussions that Daniel finally broke. He had been quiet for most of the day, but something had shifted. His usual awkwardness had given way to a quiet determination. "Zara, we can't just keep running from this," he said, his voice steady but filled with an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to show before. "We have to face this head-on, whether we like it or not. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about what comes next. About what we're going to do for this kid." Zara, who had been pacing the room, stopped and looked at him. For the first time, she saw a side of him that wasn't just confused or scared. She saw the strength of someone who, despite everything, was willing to step up. The pressure of the situation had cracked him open, but in a way that made him ready to face it all. "I don't know what we're supposed to do, Daniel," Zara admitted, her voice softening. "I never thought I'd be in this position. But I do know one thing: I can't do this without you." Daniel took a deep breath. "I never thought I'd be in this position either. But I'm not going anywhere. I may not have all the answers, but I'll be here. For you. And for our kid." The sincerity in his words struck Zara in a way she hadn't expected. For all their differences, his human awkwardness, her alien perfection, they both had something the other needed. Zara didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since the pregnancy had been confirmed, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe they could make this work. Maybe they could face the unknown together. As the days passed, Zara and Daniel continued to navigate the chaos. There were more press conferences, more alien diplomats with their own agendas, and more questions than answers. But through it all, they slowly began to build something. A partnership. A team. They were both in over their heads, but they had each other, and that had to count for something. Zara's pregnancy, which had once seemed like a cosmic accident, was now something more. It was a symbol of change, a change that neither species had anticipated. The universe might not have been ready for a hybrid child, but Zara and Daniel were doing the best they could. They didn't have all the answers, and the road ahead was uncertain. But they were determined to face it together, no matter what the galaxy threw at them next. The universe had been turned upside down, and it wasn't just because of Zara's pregnancy. It was because of what it meant: a new era for Earth, a new way of seeing humans, and a shift in galactic power dynamics that no one had anticipated. Zara and Daniel's child wasn't just a miracle, it was the symbol of a future no one had been prepared for. It was strange, powerful, and filled with uncertainty. But amidst the chaos, the two of them had found a way to exist in this new reality, together. And that, in itself, felt like the greatest accomplishment. As the months passed and Zara's pregnancy grew more evident, so did the weight of their situation. The media frenzy surrounding her and Daniel hadn't slowed down. If anything, it had only intensified. The galaxy was watching them like they were some kind of rare specimen. They had become the stars of a cosmic soap opera, and everyone was waiting for the next episode. The questions never stopped coming. How would they raise this child? What would it mean for the future of both humans and Kithrans? The speculation was endless, and Zara couldn't escape the eyes of the galaxy. Everywhere she went, there were whispers, looks, and questions. The alien elites were eager to discuss the child's potential powers, their political ambitions made clear with each passing day. Some wanted to control the child, to raise it as a weapon. Others saw it as an opportunity for peace, a bridge between two worlds that had never seen eye to eye. And then there were those who simply wanted the child for the sake of genetic research. But no matter their motives, none of them were prepared for what would come next. Zara couldn't keep up with the demands. The pressure had begun to weigh on her in ways she hadn't expected. She was no longer just Zarakez, the famous supermodel. She was Zarakez, the galactic symbol of change, and that was a heavy mantle to carry. The scrutiny was relentless, and she found herself retreating into herself more and more, wondering how she had ended up in such a bizarre situation. Her sense of identity was being swallowed up by the sheer enormity of it all. Daniel, on the other hand, had adapted in ways Zara hadn't expected. At first, he had been a nervous wreck, overwhelmed by the idea of being thrust into this intergalactic whirlwind. But as time passed, he found his footing. He had become surprisingly good at navigating the absurdity of the situation. He wasn't a politician or a diplomat, but he had a certain calmness that helped steady Zara when the storm got too intense. It was his humanity, his groundedness, that seemed to give them both a sense of stability. In many ways, Daniel had become the anchor Zara didn't know she needed. He didn't have all the answers, and he certainly wasn't perfect, but his genuine, simple approach to life made him uniquely equipped to handle the madness that surrounded them. His humor, awkward as it was, helped break through the tension when things got too serious. Zara found herself laughing more often than she ever had before, something she hadn't realized she'd been missing. But even with Daniel by her side, Zara couldn't escape the growing pressure. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she knew about what lay ahead. What kind of parent would she be to this child? How could she balance the demands of the galaxy with the responsibilities of raising a hybrid child? Her Kithran instincts told her to protect the child at all costs, but her human instincts, the ones she had picked up from Daniel, told her that love, vulnerability, and imperfection were just as important. She didn't have all the answers, but she was beginning to understand that it was okay to not know everything. As the due date approached, the situation became more intense. The galaxy had decided to hold a special summit to discuss the implications of Zara's pregnancy. It would be a gathering of the most powerful and influential species in the galaxy, all with their own agendas and opinions about the hybrid child. Zara had no choice but to attend, and Daniel, naturally, was going with her. But the thought of being in a room with so many powerful beings, all of them vying for control or influence, was daunting. Zara knew she was walking into a political minefield, one that could have consequences for Earth, for Kithara, and for her child. Despite her anxiety, Zara found herself leaning on Daniel more than ever. She had come to realize that he was more than just the father of her child, he was her partner. Their relationship had shifted in ways that neither of them had anticipated. It wasn't perfect, nothing about their situation was, but it was real. They had both been thrown into this mess, and together, they were finding a way through it. When the day of the summit arrived, Zara stood beside Daniel, feeling the weight of the universe on her shoulders. The room was filled with beings of every shape, size, and color, each one more powerful and intimidating than the last. But as she stood there, with Daniel by her side, something shifted in her. She wasn't just Zarakez anymore. She was the mother of the galaxy's most talked about child. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she had Daniel's support. That gave her more strength than she had ever realized she possessed. The summit began with speeches, as expected, each representative trying to present their views on the significance of the child, and what it could mean for their people. But as the discussions grew more heated, Zara couldn't help but feel the absurdity of it all. Here she was, a pregnant woman, surrounded by diplomats and power brokers, all trying to control her child's future. It was like some kind of intergalactic circus, and Zara wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. Daniel, sensing her discomfort, gave her a reassuring smile. It was a small gesture, but it grounded her. He didn't have the answers, and neither did she, but they both knew one thing: they had to stick together. They couldn't let the galaxy dictate their lives or the life of their child. The universe might be watching, but in the end, it was their family, their choices, that mattered most. As the summit dragged on, Zara found herself speaking up more. At first, she had stayed silent, letting the politicians argue over her child's future, but eventually, she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stood, her voice clear and strong, and spoke about her hopes for the future. She talked about the potential for unity between the species, about the power of human and Kithran genetics coming together to create something new, something that could benefit everyone. She didn't pretend to have all the answers, but she knew that the future of the galaxy couldn't be built on control or fear. It had to be built on understanding, collaboration, and trust. The room fell silent as Zara's words hung in the air. For a moment, it seemed like the galaxy was listening. And in that moment, Zara realized that maybe, just maybe, this child, her child, wasn't just a symbol of chaos. It was a symbol of hope, a new beginning for a galaxy that had long been divided. As the summit came to a close, Zara and Daniel walked out together, their future still uncertain but their resolve stronger than ever. They didn't know what would happen next. They didn't know how the galaxy would react to the child. But they did know one thing: they had each other. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.